So, I guess then we've established that Tarantino could do a good story and interesting, sympathetic characters. So, it's really good that he went to just completely abandon that for the fourth film by Quentin Tarantino then. Kill Bill.
Split, of course, into 2 volumes, apparently at the best of the Beast Weinstein and his distaste for long running times, something Tarantino will soon pay no regard to whatsoever. Kill Bill tells us of Uma Thurman's The Bride, once a member of the Deadly Viper assassination squad, who miraculously survives the bloody assassination of her wedding party by said divas, whose boss, David Carradine's Bill, apparently wasn't happy with the resignation paperwork or something. Hell of a punishment for skipping the exit interview. Years later, and freshly out of a coma, the bride resolves on revenge, going after Lucy Liu's Oren Ishii, now head boss of the Yakuza, Vivisha A. Fox's Vernitha Green, Michael Madsen's Bud, Daryl Hannah's Ellie Driver, on the way to Bill, where there, of course, is a sting in the tail. It's told in Stop Me If You've Heard This One Before, non-linear fashion, skipping around to various parts of the bride's previous life as an assassin, her relationships with the people she's now sworn to kill, her quest for Sori Chiba's Hattori Hanzo Steel, and her training with Gordon Liu's Pai Mei, but mainly it's about the killing. I recall being underwhelmed with part 1 of this, and more on board with part 2 in the main because while part 1 has most of the action, part 2 has most of the reasons you might actually care about the action. So I suppose what I'm saying is that this film can't really support being split in half, at least the way Tarantino's done it here. However, rewatching them back to back and at least somewhat remembering the plot and characters has led me to being a little less harsh on it this time around, my first revisit since its release. There was also perhaps an element of snobbery in that assessment 17 years ago. After all, Tarantino is not now, and certainly was not then, a master of action cinema, let alone the various flavours of mostly Asian cinema action he's paying homage or imitating here. After all, why watch this end of the pier tribute act when you can instead watch the source inspiration? Now, to be fair to my Stooty younger self, he's entirely correct, but I can now also view this more as the selection box of action that Tarantino appears to have intended, a starter course for the uninitiated, if you will, and he's at least had the good sense to surround himself with people who have mastered the art, like Wu Ping Yen, and the largely practical effects make for a welcome change of pace to modern action outings. But even with a greater appreciation of Kill Bill, I still don't love it, and it's not actually moved much, if at all, in the Tarantino league table. But I've maybe moved from don't bother to guarded recommendation. But yes, I tried to love it this time round, but I can't quite bring myself to be fully on board with it. It's just a bit too bloated for what ultimately is a disposable action film.
Yeah, for this being the Tarantino film, well, say films, but yeah, it should be film, that I disliked most. I was gagging to watch it again. Something to do with this film was gagging. I forget what. And it's, I don't know, you watch parts of it and Quentin Tarantino wanted to make us a martial arts film. Quentin Tarantino has no idea how to make a martial arts film. Quentin Tarantino wanted to make an anime. Quentin Tarantino has no idea how to make an anime. And I'm honestly, I think all three of us were of the mind that we liked Volume 2 more than Volume 1, which was in contrast to most of the rest of the world when we saw it the first time on its release. I think I'm largely the same now, but I still don't like either part anymore.
Yeah,
I don't find it satisfying. I don't care about the characters. The non-linear structure means that there was no tension in a single scene up until the very last section of Kill Bill Volume 2 because you already know the prize getting out of it, so why would you care? And there's so much extraneous fluff. Like it's a huge section of well, not a huge section, but a fairly large section of Kill Bill Volume 1 is like the origin of Oren Ishii. Who gives a crap? She's a minor character, the character that seems to have least beef with the bride. Yet there's an entire section about her backstory, but no other member of the Furious Five or whatever they're called. None of the other members get any backstory. So why does Oren Ishii? Oh, it's because Quentin Tarantino thought, I want to do some anime stuff. This will be a way to fit it in. It's not interesting. It's not important. It's not useful to the character of the bride or Oren Ishii. Like, I just don't care. And the majority of Kill Bill Volume 1 can be dispensed with. And then the film tends to leave me with so many questions too. You have this horrible thing happening to and I'm going to stop calling her the bride, Beatrix Kiddo, which for some reason is beeped, which is quite from the part of the fact you can hear her name clearly underneath the beep and read the lips, you know her name. What is this weird conceit with disguising her name? What is the point of that? I've never understood that, and I still don't. But I'm just like left with the question that you have. The film begins with this horrible thing happening to her, okay. Oh, and then while she's in hospital for 4 years, she's getting raped for money. Why was that necessary?
Yeah.
What did that add to the story or the character?
She hadn't suffered enough.
Yeah, especially given that she then... I wonder who hurt Quentin Tarantino. There's so many of his films about revenge of some description. Like, who was bad to him in the past? But she gets her revenge on that character within minutes anyway. Like the not Owen Wilson guy that was selling her body. It seems exactly the phrase that I Craig... Hasn't she suffered enough? Like, what merit does that have in there? What utility does it have? And there's a lot of that. And like the swords on the plane seats, like, I don't know, it just doesn't fit with the rest of the film. What are you saying, Mr. Tarantino? It's like, you probably just thought it looked cool. Okay, I guess, but it doesn't satisfy. And then you have kind of the usual tropes that if I felt the rest of the film more entertaining, I would probably forgive. But it's like, no, Uma Thurman's in a movie coma. So, you know, after having not walked her 4 years, she's up and walking within half a day.
Seems reasonable.
She killed someone and they didn't think to ever in the 13 hours she was in there look in the car of the person who was murdered. I mean, it's like stuff that, like, if I was being entertained by it, I might not care. But it's not entertaining.
I still there's maybe enough individual cool bits that you could have stitched together a 90-minute film that would be acceptably entertaining. But this bloated, what was this, 3 hour plus mess when you take the whole 2 volumes together? There's just not enough here to sustain it in the slightest. So,
I feel like you've kind of touched on the thing there, Scott, is that this is at some point in the last week I had to make the decision as to whether or not to watch all of these movies or sacrifice a couple of them and actually spend time with my kids. And so the first...
Watch all of them.
Yeah, first on the chopping block, I wish I had. First on the chopping block was the Kill Bill films. Because they're the ones, well, I made the effort to revisit Death Proof, and I'm sure we'll talk about that in a minute. But Kill Bill, I had seen at the cinema with you guys, both parts, and technically I enjoyed part 2 more than part 1, but that wasn't saying much. Yeah. I really did enjoy it, and my recollection of it, and it will have to be a recollection because I haven't watched it at all since both parts were in cinemas, is that this is the first of his original screenplays where I felt like, and I'm sure it's not the case, but I kind of got the impression that maybe he hadn't thought about it enough in advance. And it just seems to be a series of cool individual vignettes, Scott, as you touch on. I think there were a series of individual ideas he had that would be cool for martial arts movies strung together. And really the overall impression I had at the time was that it was just trying too hard. And I don't know whether the people's disappointment with Jackie Brown made him feel like he had to swing back the other way and give audience what he perceived they wanted, but it just doesn't work. I hated Uma Thurman in that role. I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of her acting ability in the first place, but some of the dialogue that was forced into her mouth was just cringeworthy. I really just felt it was a step too far in almost all aspects, and it felt like it was trying too hard to be fan service for the people who were disappointed by Jackie Brown. And I just think it was a really big misstep, and I don't know if it was just ego getting the better of him or whether he just, for all that he proclaims to be, because I think we can agree that he's got an encyclopedic knowledge of film, but whether martial arts films, which he's always professed a great love for, are actually ones that he understands the structure of the least, I don't know. But I had to make a choice to sacrifice a couple of these films at least, and it was always going to be Kill Bill because of the Tarantino films that I've seen. Both volumes of this are easily the least enjoyable in my opinion.
As I say, I'd hoped I would have more appreciation from it on a review after this distance of time, but no, not in the slightest, not really.
I think part of the problem too is that I don't care about any of the characters.
Mm-hmm. Why would you? You know?
Yeah, exactly. But part of it's dialogue, and I don't rate Uma Thurman at all. I like you, Craig. And I don't think I've seen her in anything that isn't Pulp Fiction, Kill Bill, Dangerous Liaisons, or The Producers.
I have one word for you, Drew. Paycheck.
Could you take that one word back and not remind me that that's a fifth film I've seen her in?
Share my pain.
I don't care to remember that. But yeah, so I've not seen her in a lot. So my main experience of Uma Thurman, because her role in Dangerous Liaisons and Big, is of her working with Quentin Tarantino. And like, she's never really impressed me. And also I wonder too, like, it's Kill Bill very prominently displays the fact that the bride character is based on a character created by Q and U, which is, again, we're back into this levels of pretension and hubris too. It's like the fourth film from Quentin Tarantino, and then describing the characters by Q and U. Well, obviously Quentin and U. Why are you calling yourself that? You just look like a fanny.
Oh, Quentin, you're acting like a pure fanny, by the way.
You know, while we were talking about Jackie Brown and we were talking about his selection of actors, Drew, it occurred to me that I think what he's really good at doing is identifying in genre actors in particular qualities that perhaps they've not had the opportunity to capitalise on in the sort of movies that they've been in, and then giving them that pedestal at a later date, sort of giving them the opportunity to express that. And I think he's really amazing at that. And I think that's one of the most interesting things about Pam Grier and Robert Forster, his choice, in that he clearly identified aspects of those actors who that they hadn't had a great opportunity in their careers before to demonstrate. But I'm fascinated by his obsession with Uma Thurman, which, I mean, beyond his professed love for her feet, which we are all forced to suffer, you know, in any of the films of his that she's in. I just don't see what the quality is he identifies in her, in the same way that it's obvious to me what he saw in Pam Grier and what he saw in Robert Forster.
Yeah, or even John Travolta. Yeah, I don't know. But the point I was going towards just was that whether, I'm wondering, with her being involved in the creation of the character, whether she's involved also possibly in the dialogue her character is given, because it's uncharacteristically poor for Quentin Tarantino. And before I make my other point, it's like, I would like to slightly make up for your mention of Paycheck, Craig, by mentioning Gattaca, which I had forgotten she was in, but she's really good. So
fair enough.
I have seen at least something good. Other than the Quentin Tarantino films. But yeah, I think one of the biggest problems with it is the character. I mean, yes, horrible things have happened to her, but that's basically her entire character. Somebody had horrible things happen to them. But she's a killer. She's not a good person. Whereas, like, Jules and Vincent in Pulp Fiction are not good people. They're hired killers. But there was so much character and charisma and chemistry between those two in particular. The dialogue is great. You could just sit and listen to Samuel Jackson and John Travolta speak those characters' lines all day without any problem. So you care what happens to them because they're really entertaining. And The Bride in Kill Bill is a complete blank.
What puzzles me about it is it's not that hard to rejigger the events of this film, move some bits from 2 up front. Basically, here's an idea, put it in the order that time happens in. Try that for a change. If you have a young...
And then you have tension.
If you have a young kid, becomes, falls under Bill's spell, gets taken, becomes trained as an assassin, eventually has a change of heart, and then is betrayed, then you've built up a reason to care about her, then she gets revenge. It's not that hard to book. Just put this in a sensible order, and I think it would be a much better film. And then you would have all the action beats, the huge bits getting towards the end. You could build up to them. You have little action bits sort of coming through the training process. Structure it like a normal film, like the films, I'm sure, on any number of several dozen action films that Quentin Tarantino's more than familiar with, and this would have worked, I think, much better than it does just now.
But he's the guy who made his name non-chronologically, Scott, and when he tried to do something different, people were disappointed.
Yeah. Sadly, that may be the case. That might have been what it is.
I really think it is.
Yeah. It's weird, though. You think... I'm just saying, that to me doesn't make sense, because again, I'm coming back to this idea of hubris. The fact he is in, not just like, it's not a marketing team at the company, at the movie studio or anything. in his own film, he's trumpeting this as the fourth film from Quentin Tarantino, referring to himself with a single letter when he talks about who created the character. Like, that doesn't square to me with like having any sort of doubt about what structure it should have.
Yeah.
I don't get that.
Let's not forget still that though he's, for all the talent he's displayed so far, he's still only 4 films into his career, and I think it is just perhaps things ran away from under him, and this is just a misstep, maybe born of inexperience. Because I think those first 3 films are so accomplished, it's easy to forget that this is a guy who is still relatively early on in his filmmaking career.
Yeah, but at the same time, for someone as film literate as him, I really don't think he's book literate, and I think maybe that would actually help some of his films story-wise. But for someone as cinema literate as he is, to not appreciate that, like, you've removed all tension from your character being buried alive by the fact you've shown a scene half an hour earlier that you know that she got out of it and she's on the way because she's killed everybody else on her list. So like that, it feels like. So he must know that. So the reason for that decision is something else. Then I don't know what, but I don't understand why he doesn't know that's basically killed most of the dramatic tension in his film. Again, given that the story isn't strong and it mostly seems to be a reason to have all these little vignettes, maybe he doesn't care. But it's like if you just like you can have flashbacks, because that's not the same as non-linear, as I mentioned earlier. But like Scott's saying, you just put this in order, chop out most of the stuff, especially the over niche stuff. Then you could have a much tighter film, and it's like, and it builds like to the final showdown with Bill, and like she's the heroine. You assume she'll get out of any situations, but she might not. It may be that. Because exactly with only his 4th film too, you're like, well, maybe Tarantino will do something unexpected here, because it's not uncommon for his films to end with almost everybody dying. So you don't expect Vincent Vega to die, do you? So maybe she'd be trying to get to Bill, and it never actually happens. But yeah, I don't understand why he picked this structure and spread it over 2 films.
Yeah, so I think we can agree it just doesn't work.